I was nominated for this push-up challenge and this is day 1. Magpush up lang ako doon. Wait lang ha. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Bakit kailangan kailangan kita sa camera? Joke lang. Anyway, this is a very powerful movement to make mental health a very visible topic in our daily conversation. And I would like to tweak the wording of the challenge. Ethical journalism suggests that we avoid using the term commit in handling narratives on suicide. The word further stigmatizes suicide as something equivalent to committing arson, committing adultery, committing murder. A better language is died by suicide, as it doesn't give the impression that it is a criminal act, but rather a story of someone struggling with mental health, which if untreated can push them to take their own life. So, day 2 pa lang tayo. Ba't pa kasi kailangan 25 push-ups? Pwede namang 25 claps. Pwede namang 25 snap of a finger. But kailangan exercise? Well, may scientific basis siya. It's neurochemistry. Whenever we do exercise, we release endorphins. These are pleasure chemicals. And also, it reduces stress hormones like cortisol. So, may science backing naman siya. So, it helps people with anxiety, depression, and with PTSD. So, ito, 25 push-ups. Ba't kailangan 25 days? Ba't di na lang pwedeng 2 days or 3 days of a challenge? Well, another science backing is the more that you regularly do it, the more na sustain yung pag-release ng ganong chemicals. So it helps you in managing stress. You know the awkward thing about this challenge that everybody thinks about but no one wants to say it? Mugta ka mag-video ng sarili while doing push-ups. Selfie nga, I rarely post video of myself pa kaya right in front of you. Anyway, kaya maraming mirrors sa gym because in the same way mirrors and videos of yourself exercising is helpful in checking kung tama ba yung form mo, if meron na bang noticeable gains sa mga muscles mo, having self-reflection is our way of doing mental checkups. Have you ever asked yourself, okay ka pa ba? Also, having a way to document your thoughts like journaling is going to be helpful in keeping track of your progress mental health-wise. We've all been seeing this challenge, this trend for quite some time now. Pero sino ba yung post nito? Well, according to my research, this movement is made by Andrew Nguyen, a Marine veteran. 7 years ago, he created the 22 push-up challenge because according to a 2012 study, 22 veterans take their own life because of mental health problems. It was made to spread awareness and raise funds for veteran service charities. So, ang initial reaction ko after hearing this, shit, sino nagdagdag ng 3? Dapat 22 challenge, 22 push-up lang, no? Patayin 25. Well, movements evolve. So, sasabay tayo. Anxiety is a human emotion that occurs when we anticipate something unpleasant may happen. Being anxious is a normal human experience. Bago ka mag-exam, pag may narinig kang kaluskos, or pag nakikita mo na nagka-type na ng reply sa chat ng crush mo. But if feeling anxious is normal, where do we draw the line between anxiety, the human emotion, and anxiety, the mental disorder? If you are unsure, you can have yourself diagnosed. I'm no expert, and what I'm about to share are things I only saw online. And you can really clear things up if you seek professional help. Nothing beats a physical and personal consultation with a therapist, where you get to speak face-to-face and actually hear an educated response about your situation. If you've been wanting to do that but for some reason you can't, you can start with these baby steps by tapping into these free resources online. It's not a full substitute for an actual counseling or therapy session, but we can start from here. Katie Morton is a YouTuber and a licensed therapist. Her videos about different conditions are well explained. Pero if you want someone local, there is Dr. Gia Season, a doctor and a mental health advocate. She discusses her advocacy on interviews and podcasts. Lahat yan free online. Why still do this challenge? Everybody knows about these mental health problems already. If you think that way, then the simple answer is you are not a target audience. There are some who are completely unaware that what they're experiencing is already a precursor to a full-blown mental health illness. There are some who have been delaying treatment for the longest time, and maybe seeing someone stubbornly doing push-ups for 25 days straight is the one thing that can push them. That's the whole point of doing it for 25 days and nominating different people along the way. Someone in their social media circle could be the one person who needed the most. You're lucky you're not the target audience. Let us reach out to those who are. Would this actually lead to something? May nagagawa ba talaga yung mga ganitong push-up challenge for people with anxiety, depression, and PTSD? Well, because of this push-up challenge, in Australia, currently they have raised 5.1 million US dollars. In the UK, back in 2017, because of this challenge, donation reached to 391,000 US dollars. And in the US, the Veterans Affairs Office had budget increase for their services, and their report of suicide rates of 22 cases per day was revised to 16.8 in 2019. I can't confirm the causation sa suicide rate, but we can't ignore the correlation. According to a World Health Organization study back in 2016, in the global suicide death rate, most of it are men. Also, consultation rates for depression were 8% lower in men than women. This big gender difference is born out of toxic expectations of masculinity, that being emotional is weak, that we have to be strong and unfazed all the time. Young boys were told not to cry, and men are made to believe that the best way to deal with the problem is to punch a wall or drink alcohol. It's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to reach out, it does not make you less of a man. Whenever we hear news reports about famous personalities who suffered from depression, it's usually those who died by suicide. And although that's unfortunate in and of itself, the stories that get attention are those celebrities who dealt with depression by taking their own life. We can shift the narrative on celebrities and mental health by instead highlighting those who have overcome depression or are continuously battling it. One good example is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who also did this challenge. People always think that there is a dichotomy between the physical and the mental health. That's why many underestimate the power of exercise in making us mentally healthy. Having said that, if working out could be a solution for anxiety, depression, and PTSD, then conversely, mental health problems could have some physical manifestations, so hindi lang siya puro thoughts lang. Our body is so smart, it has physical ways to tell our brain na baka may mental health illness na tayo. Back pains and joint pains, well, there is a study saying that there's a direct association between depression and back pains. Having a hard time sleeping, well, elevated levels of stress hormone like cortisol and adrenaline cause disruptions in sleeping pattern. We convince ourselves na okay lang tayo, pero our body is actually telling otherwise. So listen to our body. Around 17 to 20% of Filipino adults are dealing with psychiatric disorders, while 10 to 15% of Filipino youth below 15 years old have mental health problems. In fact, according to NSO, mental health illnesses are the third most common diseases in the Philippines. If those figures and data seem alarming, then you'd be more concerned with what World Health Organization said, that in terms of mental health issues, they are typically underreported or underdiagnosed. There's a host of possible reasons why this is the case: reluctance of people to get checked, the lack of awareness about these issues, and the deficiency in institutional mental health care services. Trigger warning. They are meant to give a heads up or alert the viewer or reader that the following material contains potentially distressing or upsetting themes like rape, extreme violence, or suicide. According to experts and peer-reviewed research, a graphic depiction of a completed suicide on a show or a movie can push vulnerable people to romanticize the idea. There was actually an issue about this on an episode of 13 Reasons Why, where with no trigger warnings at all, the protagonist was shown to have completed the suicide act. It's a debate about artistic license versus sensitivity. Trigger warnings target those who are recovering from a traumatic experience or in a bad mental state. If you don't have any issues watching those scenes, then those trigger warnings are not intended for you. How do you imagine a conversation about mental health? You must have thought that it's in black and white, and there's a sad song playing in the background, and the conversation has dark undertones. This kind of sinister perception about people with anxiety, depression, and PTSD is influenced by how the media depicts them. And since nobody wants to talk about it, those are the only image that people think of. This stigma about mental health diseases na associated siya with criminal acts or problematic or dysfunctional people perpetuates shame and secrecy. Pwede mo siya tingnan as any health issue. You don't hide the fact that you're diabetic. When you're injured, hindi mo naman tinatago at hindi ka naman nahihiya. Openly talking about these encourages others to do the same and maybe have some consultation. It can be a light-hearted conversation as long as it's delicately handled. Put it out in the light, we don't have to live our lives stigmatized. I just want to talk about Frontliners. There was a report published that Filipino healthcare workers, more than the physical and financial burden that they're experiencing, mental stress is also taking a toll on them. Siguro dapat din na tayo magulat doon, no? Kasi more than the patients, frontliners are the ones who experience firsthand a depressing, inducing situation. Actually, there was a survey done early this year sa China out in 34 hospitals. Out of 1,200 healthcare workers, almost 50% reported having symptoms of depression and anxiety. Sure, check up on all our friends, but also check up on our frontliner friends. Let's add mental health care assistance to the things we ensure that the government will provide for our healthcare workers. This is a sensitive and divisive topic, but I gotta say it, the role of religious spirituality to mental health recovery. People in psychological crisis tend to seek help to their God or to the religious community. And yes, a study has shown that religious expression makes one feel empowered and hold on to emotions such as hope and forgiveness. But that research also concluded that we must overall be cautious on relying on just this approach, as it can actually be harmful to our mental health, giving a distressed person feelings of guilt, shame, or powerlessness. We can't just pray our depression or anxiety away. A spiritual leader might really care for you, but they are not equipped to address mental health the way professionals are. At best, I guess faith can be a supplementary tool, but it should never be a full replacement to therapy and treatment. Today, I learned the term for looking into mental health friendly foods. It's nutritional psychiatry. It's the study of how diet impacts our mental health. And it makes sense. When working out or when our body is recovering, we are recommended to consume certain foods, right? So by extension, we have to do the same for our brain. A study has shown that a healthy diet reduces the risk of depression by around 30%. The food for our mood: whole grains, fruits and vegetables, beans, fish, olive oil, because these are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D, magnesium, and etc. Invest on nutrition. Day 19, I'm about to finish this, but I guess this must be clarified. I am not a doctor. I am not a therapist. But am I the only one who got confused between a psychologist and a psychiatrist? Well, both have licenses and both can treat mental health conditions, but it is only the psychiatrist who can prescribe medications and they have a medical degree. So it works like this. If you're feeling unwell, physically or mentally, consult your physician or family doctor first. They're the most accessible ones. They can rule out whether your symptoms are signs of a mental illness or maybe due to other causes that kind of look similar to depression, like hormonal changes, vitamin or mineral deficiency, or medication side effect. If it is the former, they can refer you to a psychologist who will then provide diagnosis and therapy. If psychologists deem that medication is necessary for your treatment, they can refer you to a psychiatrist who are specialists, can do lab tests, and offer prescription medication. Consult and listen to mental health professionals and not a pusher like me. Push up. People like to showcase their independence, but when it comes to mental health issues, it's kind of tricky. They're not as obvious like a bleeding cut in your skin. Most, if not all, mental health issues are so insidious, di mo namamalayan, it's slowly developing. We usually overestimate ourselves, so you end up self-medicating with alcohol, or sometimes you do self-diagnosis. Those online surveys or checklists about mental health, well, pwede mo siya i-treat as an initial step, but it should never be considered as a proper diagnosis. One exclusive thing about professional consultation is you have active input. You hear their questions and reactions. What if survey says you're okay, but you're actually not? What if you think you don't have any depression, but a proper diagnosis would have identified an emerging symptom? Sometimes we're not the one dealing with a mental illness, but someone we know. If that's the case, how to be that friend that they can talk to and how to have that conversation with them. Maraming mga unspoken rules about it, understandably so kasi this is uncharted territory for most of us, but I think it can be summed up with these rules. Give the power to share or not to your friend. Just let them know you can be a listening ear if they need one. Don't focus on unraveling the specifics. Asking for details can be quite intrusive for some people. Ask about how they are feeling instead. Don't make it about you and on how you won over your struggles. Don't invalidate their mental health problems. And sana wag natin isipin na nag-iinarte or OA lang. Granting that it's also possible, but the risk of diluting one's battle with mental illness as mere performance is very high. What if you're wrong and you pushed your friend further in a dark hole? So better err on the side of caution. If you can no longer handle the repeated emotional unloading of your friend, you can set your boundaries for yourself. Tell that friend that you cannot accommodate the heavy conversation right now. However, please encourage them to seek professional consultation. What are the common things about Black Mirror's Nosedive, the movies Nerve and John Denver trending? They perfectly show how high social media usage negatively affects our mental health. This is not just opinion. There are a lot of studies supporting it. The top 3 diagnoses for university students are anxiety, depression, and stress, all linked to being active digital citizens. And the 4 major factors present in social media are highlight reel, you compare your behind the scenes to someone's highlight. 2. Social currency, the number of likes and shares determine your value. 3. FOMO or fear of missing out, you always want to be part of what everybody is doing. And lastly, online harassment, trolling, and cyberbullying. These are all well explained on the YouTube video link below. Know that it's perfectly valid to unfollow people and do some social media detox for our mental health. This awareness campaign is actually about anxiety, depression, and PTSD, but I have to admit, I rarely talk about PTSD. And am I the only one who thought that PTSD is only for soldiers? So what I did is I quickly looked into DSM and checked out the criteria kung paano mo masasabi kung may PTSD ka. PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. I'll discuss this in two parts. Firstly, post-traumatic, meaning after you had exposure to trauma and it must be life-threatening. Trauma could be death, an actual serious injury, or kahit threatened death or threatened injury, and of course, extreme sexual violence. And by exposure, hindi lang pala directly experienced, even witnessing, learning about a traumatic event happened to a loved one or a place near you, and even indirect repeated exposure to details of trauma which frontliners or first responders always experience. Now the second part, since it's a stress disorder, meron siya dapat lingering effect. Symptoms should persist for more than 1 month. Also, one experiences intrusive symptoms like flashbacks or nightmares, and they avoid reminders of the trauma. And merong struggles for cognitive and social functions. Now, disclaimer, this is just an overview. If you relate to it but are not sure, you can have yourself diagnosed properly. TIL, PTSD. Second to the last day, when the mental health law was approved in June 2018, a bill authored by Senator Riza Hontiveros, it was a big step for the Philippines. It really added mental in healthcare. Before this, the Philippines is one of the minority of countries na walang mental health legislation. It put on paper what are the rights of people with mental illnesses. So if you feel na because of your mental health condition, na discriminate ka, na abuso ka, or di nirespeto yung consent mo, know that the law is finally on your side. It institutionalizes equally important part of healthcare by ensuring that mental health services is accessible even to the barangay level. It requires LGUs, schools, companies to spread mental health awareness, and this law created a system involving DOH, PhilHealth, and DSWD to have better public healthcare for people suffering from this condition. Having this legislated is great because it no longer relies on any assumption na alam na ng mga tao or ng mga offices how to handle cases like mental health. But although this is worth celebrating, just like any other law, real benefits will accrue if it is implemented well. Day 25, last day. Let's do a meta discussion on this one. Why does a social media awareness campaign like this work anyway? In communication strategy, we have to understand the elements of an effective information drive. We can do a case study with a similar online trend before, the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. First, we do an awareness campaign because of a problem. Something is unheard of. But wait, di ba parang medyo alam na naman natin kung ano yung anxiety, depression, and PTSD? Well, that's arguable. I think there will always be people that feel that these are foreign concepts to them. But going back to 2012, when this push-up challenge was just starting out, these mental health issues are so unknown, and thus there was a big need to put these terms online. 8 years later, I'd like to think that the goal has evolved. From introducing these issues to the public, the agenda now is we should still be doing this push-up challenge so that these topics maintain their relevance. So in ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, the neurological disease that is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, it is such a rare condition that people don't know about it, and thus kulang ng funding for research. That's why nagkaroon ng ganong online challenge para magkaroon ng promotion of donations. Second one, a campaign must have something unusual or quirky to gain traction. And yung pagbuhos ng ice sa katawan, the reaction of people can be quite funny, and that contributes to the virality of the videos. So, ano naman ang unusual sa push-up? That's the thing about this challenge. I think it's not just about the push-up per se, but the commitment to do 25 push-ups for 25 days straight. It's weird to video record yourself doing that, all the more if you repeatedly do it, annoying your online friends for almost a month. And the added appeal of this challenge, there are many people who get nominated, and doing push-ups can be so uncharacteristic of them. But for the sake of the campaign, they did that. That's why this push-up challenge works. Dami kong sinabi mo ko push-up na lang. Tara. Ayoko. Huwag na lang. Ayoko na.